The nasty HOA lady spotted the car catching fire, but instead of helping, she snatched up my keys and locked my disabled daughter inside. The flames were getting closer by the second. Smirking, she said, "Rules are rules," not realizing I was a police commander. That smug look disappeared real fast when I flashed my badge. Car alarms and screaming shattered what had been a peaceful Sunday afternoon at Pine Ridge Estates. I was halfway through building a treehouse for my 7-year-old daughter, Emma, when I heard people shouting, "Fire! Someone help!" Without thinking, I dropped my hammer and sprinted toward the noise. After serving as a police commander for 2 decades, running toward danger was second nature. We'd only been living in this neighborhood for 3 weeks. After losing my wife, I thought maybe a quiet place like this would help Emma heal. Emma was born with a condition that left her muscles weak, and she needed a wheelchair to get around. But even with her challenges, she was smart, brave, and stronger than most grown-ups I knew. She made me proud every single day. As I rounded the corner onto Maple Drive, I stopped dead in my tracks. A crowd had gathered around the community center parking lot, where thick black smoke was pouring out of a silver car. But what truly froze my heart was seeing our family van parked nearby, with Emma trapped inside. Just half an hour earlier, I had left Emma with our neighbor, Mrs. Lee, so I could focus on the treehouse. They were supposed to be attending a kids' reading event at the community center. Now, all I could think was, what the hell was happening? Pushing through the crowd, I spotted Mrs. Lee trying desperately to get to my van. Blocking her path stood a tall woman in a pricey-looking cream suit. "Move! There's a child in there!" Mrs. Lee cried, her voice trembling with panic. "Nobody's touching this vehicle until security verifies if it belongs here," the woman snapped, refusing to budge. "This is a private event for approved residents only." Immediately, I knew who she was: Karen Brooks, the over-the-top HOA president whose welcome packet had more rules than hell itself. Neighbors had warned me about her, but I'd thought they were exaggerating. "That's my daughter!" I shouted, rushing toward them. Karen met my gaze with icy eyes. "Stop right there," she ordered. "This vehicle is parked illegally during a restricted event." Meanwhile, the flames from the burning car were getting bigger, and the smoke and heat were drifting straight toward my van. Inside, Emma was trapped in her special seat, her face pressed against the window, looking terrified. "Step away from my van," I barked, closing the distance fast. But Karen just squared her shoulders and lifted her chin. "I already called security and a tow truck. No one registered this ugly vehicle for today's event. Rules are for everyone's safety." Mrs. Lee, crying hard now, tried pleading again. "The child has a disability," she said through tears. I only went inside for a second to grab her book. When I came back, the fire had started, and this woman wouldn't let me near the van. I could see Emma inside, struggling to reach the door locks, but her weak muscles made it impossible. The special controls we had installed, to help her, were just out of her reach on the other side. "My daughter is in danger." "Now," I said in a voice so cold and firm, it could have frozen lava, the kind of voice I only ever used on duty. Karen barely glanced at Emma. "For all I know," she said, shrugging, "you're just using some random kid to break our parking rules." I spotted my keys, dangling in Karen's manicured hand. Mrs. Lee must have accidentally left them when she ran inside for the book. Suddenly, the fire raging in the silver car shot even higher, forcing the crowd to back away. Flames now covered half the car, and even from 20 feet out, we could feel the blast of heat. Thick, choking smoke swallowed the parking lot. Someone in the crowd yelled, "Lady, that car's gonna explode." Someone in the crowd shouted a warning. Karen shot a nervous glance at the burning car, but unbelievably, she still refused to move. "If you had properly registered your vehicle and your child for this event," she said, "we wouldn't be in this situation." That was it. I lost it. "I'm Commander Jack Sullivan, 8th Precinct," I snapped. "And you are actively blocking an emergency rescue during a life-threatening situation." I yanked my police badge out of my pocket and held it up for everyone to see. "Move or I will move you." For the first time, Karen's confidence cracked. But instead of doing the smart thing and stepping aside, she pulled something unbelievable. She hit the lock button on my key fob. I heard the click, saw the van's lights blink. Inside, Emma's eyes grew huge with fear. "I'm securing this vehicle until the proper authorities arrive," Karen said, her voice just a little shaky now. "If you really are police, you'll appreciate the importance of following rules." Another loud pop came from the burning car. We had, maybe, 2 minutes left before the gas tank would blow. "Everyone back up," I yelled to the crowd, then turned right back to Karen. "Give me those keys. Now." Instead of doing the obvious, Karen stepped backward and clutched the keys even tighter. "I know my rights," she said sharply. "This is private property managed by the HOA. You don't have authority here without—" She never finished her sentence. Out of nowhere, Marcus Turner, the 17-year-old football star from across the street, came flying in like it was game day. He tackled Karen clean to the ground. "Sorry, ma'am," Marcus said quickly, prying the keys from her stunned hand and tossing them to me. "That kid's about to fry in there." I caught the keys and sprinted to the van, my hands shaking. The metal door handle was so hot from the nearby fire, it nearly burned my skin. Thick, choking smoke filled the air, making it almost impossible to breathe. "Daddy!" Emma cried as I yanked open the door and fumbled with the harness holding her in. "I've got you, sweetheart. Close your eyes, hold your breath," I said, scooping her into my arms. At that exact moment, the burning car's window exploded, sending shards of glass flying everywhere. Shielding Emma with my body, I ran, not stopping until we were clear of the danger. As I passed by, I caught sight of Karen on the ground. Marcus and another neighbor were holding her down. Her once perfect cream suit was streaked with dirt and soot, and her face was twisted in pure rage, even with the fire roaring nearby. "You can't touch me. Do you know who I am?" she screamed at them. I didn't stop. I didn't even look at her. I kept running until Emma and I were across the street. I set her down carefully on a garden bench, well away from the smoke and flames. Her wheelchair was still inside the van, but that was the least of my worries right then. "You hurt anywhere?" I asked, scanning her for cuts or burns, doing my best to keep my voice steady. Emma shook her head, her blonde pigtails bouncing. "Mrs. Lee went inside to get my book," she said, her voice small and shaky. "Then the car caught fire, and that mean lady wouldn't let her come back. She told me people like me shouldn't be at normal people's events." Hearing those words made my blood boil. But before I could say anything, a thunderous boom rocked the parking lot. The burning car's gas tank had finally exploded, sending flames shooting high into the sky and spreading fast along the ground. In the distance, we heard fire trucks screaming toward us, but I knew right away they weren't gonna get there in time. We stood there helpless, watching as the fire leapt to my van. Within minutes, the tires caught, and then the whole van was burning, along with Emma's special wheelchair, her speech device, and all the customized equipment that gave her the freedom she deserved. As I stood there, feeling the loss hit me like a gut punch, Mrs. Lee came running up, crying so hard she could barely speak. "I'm so sorry, Jack," she sobbed. "I only left her for a minute. That woman, she grabbed your keys right out of my purse when I put it down to show my ID." "It's not your fault," I said, voice low, trying to keep my anger from spilling over. Even though my head was spinning with everything that had just happened, I tried to stay focused. When the first police cruiser rolled up, I immediately recognized Officer Emily Ramirez stepping out. She used to work under my command before I transferred out here. "Commander Sullivan," she said, wide-eyed. "What are you doing here?" "I live here now," I said, my voice tight. "And I need you to arrest that woman for child endangerment, theft, and obstructing emergency services." Karen Brooks, who had been loudly arguing with some of the neighbors, immediately went silent when she saw Emily walking toward her. That's when it seemed to finally hit her. I wasn't bluffing. "This is all just a big misunderstanding," Karen stammered, brushing dirt off her wrinkled suit and trying to pull herself together. "I was only enforcing our community rules. Things just got a little out of hand." "You locked a disabled child in a vehicle," Officer Ramirez said flatly, pulling out her handcuffs, "with a burning car just a few feet away. And you stole the keys from her caretaker." "I didn't steal anything. I was just securing an unauthorized," Karen started to argue, but Ramirez cut her off coldly. "Save it for your statement," she said, snapping the cuffs on Karen's wrists and reading her rights. The days that followed were some of the hardest we'd faced, but also some of the most surprising. Our van was a total loss, along with all of Emma's special equipment. Her custom wheelchair alone had cost over 20 grand, and the insurance company would cover some of it, but it could take weeks, maybe even months, to replace everything. But then, something I never expected happened. Word about what happened spread through the neighborhood, and the community that once felt so cold and rule-obsessed suddenly rallied around us. Marcus's parents offered to let us use their van, which had a wheelchair ramp, whenever we needed it. A retired engineer, who lived a few streets over, got to work building Emma a temporary wheelchair out of spare parts he had in his garage. Even the nervous members of the HOA finally found their backbone. They called an emergency meeting and voted to remove Karen from her position. And then, the biggest surprise of all, Robert Brooks, Karen's husband of 30 years, showed up at our temporary apartment the very next day. His eyes were red, and his hands were trembling as he held out a check. "This won't cover everything," he said quietly, pressing it into my hand. "But it's a start." I looked down and saw the number, $75,000. "I can't take this," I said immediately, trying to hand it back. But Robert shook his head firm. "Please. You're not the first family she's hurt, just the first with the strength to hold her accountable. I filed for divorce this morning. I'm liquidating everything before she can hide the assets. Think of this as just a small piece of the damage she's caused over the years." And honestly, that was just the beginning of Karen's downfall. During the police investigation, they pulled up security footage from the community center, and what they found was chilling. The videos clearly showed Karen stealing the keys from Mrs. Lee's purse, and even worse, standing there smiling while Emma struggled inside the locked van. Then the real bombshell dropped. Investigators found text messages on Karen's phone, texts she sent to a friend, bragging, "Finally getting rid of the undesirables in our community." Fireworks pretty well. Once the district attorney saw all that, they upgraded the charges to attempted voluntary manslaughter. It didn't take long for the story to blow up. Every local news station plastered Karen's face all over the evening news. And after that, former neighbors from other places she'd lived started coming forward, sharing their own horror stories about her cruelty and abuse of power. Karen's real estate company fired her the same week. Clients pulled their listings fast. She lost everything. The court ordered a psychiatric evaluation for Karen, and the results were brutal. She showed a dangerous lack of empathy and felt sorry only because she got caught. 2 weeks later, while we were still waiting for Emma's new wheelchair to be delivered, we decided to visit the community center for the reopening of the library. The fire damage had been repaired, and they had even installed a brand new ramp to replace the old stairs at the entrance, a project quickly approved by the newly elected HOA board. We figured it would just be a quiet visit, but when we walked in, we were stunned to see a crowd of neighbors waiting for us. They stood around a table that was covered with a big white sheet. Mrs. Lee stood at the front, tears shining in her eyes as she smiled. "We couldn't replace everything," she said softly, holding the edge of the sheet. "But we wanted to help give Emma back her voice." She pulled the cloth away, and underneath was a brand new communication device, even better than the one Emma had lost. Marcus knelt beside Emma's borrowed wheelchair, grinning. "Everybody pitched in," he said. "Even folks from other neighborhoods who heard about what happened." Emma's eyes lit up as she reached for the device. Her fingers moved quickly, finding the buttons even though the design was a little different. She typed her first message, and when it popped up on the screen, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "Thank you for seeing me, not just my chair." As for Karen Brooks, her problems were just getting started. The investigation uncovered a long, ugly history. She had pulled the same cruel stunts on elderly and disabled residents for years. She had blocked wheelchair ramps for families who needed them, towed cars belonging to disabled drivers even when they had valid permits, and used her HOA power to make life miserable for anyone she didn't think fit in. At her sentencing, the judge didn't hold back. "Mrs. Brooks," he said sternly, "your actions show a pattern of discrimination that nearly led to the death of a disabled child. This court sentences you to 15 years in state prison, with no chance of parole for 10 years. As they led Karen away in handcuffs, she finally broke down, sobbing and begging for forgiveness. But it was too late. The community she had bullied for so long turned their backs on her without hesitation. In a final, almost poetic twist, her husband Robert donated their mansion, the same one she had lorded over the neighborhood from, to be turned into a recreation center for disabled children. And the best part? The center was named after my daughter. A bronze plaque was placed right at the entrance, telling the story of how one brave little girl's struggle exposed years of cruelty and sparked a change that transformed an entire community. 6 months later, on a beautiful spring morning, we gathered for the grand opening of Emma's place. What used to be the Brooks Mansion had been completely transformed. Now it was a vibrant, colorful wonderland where kids of every ability could play together. The funding came partly from Karen's seized assets, and the rest from generous community donations. As Emma cut the bright red ribbon from her brand new wheelchair, surrounded by new friends who saw her spirit instead of her disability, I felt a heavy weight finally lift off my shoulders. The cruelty Karen intended had accidentally created something beautiful. A place where rules took a backseat to kindness. A place where people mattered more than policies. That night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she asked me the question I'd been dreading. "Daddy, will the mean lady ever get out of jail?" I thought about lying, but Emma deserved honesty. "Not for a very long time, sweetheart," I said gently. What she did was very wrong. Emma was quiet for a moment, then said something that blew me away. "That's good. Sometimes bad people need a really long time out, so they can learn to be nice." And now her house is helping lots of kids like me. Out of the ashes of hatred, something truly wonderful had grown. A community that had finally learned to put people before rules and love before fear. The price had been high, but seeing my daughter thrive in a world that now celebrated her spirit, not her limitations, made every bit of the fire we walked through worth it.